Hey guys, welcome back. Really looking forward to talking today about Abraham buying a gravesite. Doesn't sound important, but wow, when you think about Israel's history, when you think about the promises of God, it's a very strategic purpose and purchase. We'll find out about that on today's episode.
Welcome to Everyday Truth with Kurt Skelly. We believe the Bible is true and relevant to everyone, everywhere, every day. If today's conversation is a help to you, take a moment to leave a review or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Now, let's join Kurt for today's episode.
Hey friends, welcome back to our episode in the book of Genesis, talking about the life of Abraham. And we've entitled this series, Promises Made, Promises Kept. And I love that about our Lord. You can bank on it. When God has given you a promise, he makes good on what he says. And all throughout Abraham's life, and he's getting to be really old about this point, God has just been faithful. Look at verse number 1 of Genesis 23. And Sarah was 107 and 20 years old. So 127. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Now, what's interesting about Sarah is that she's the only woman in the Bible who, upon her death, it's giving her age at death. And I found that interesting. And I feel what it does is it ennobles, it shows the value of this matriarch, this one whom God used really at the inception of this plan to use this family, and through this family and through their seed would all the nations of the world be blessed. So God gives us her age. Verse number 2, Sarah died in Kirjath Arba. Now that's a when we take these Hebrew words and put them in English, we just butcher them. Kirjath really is the word Kiryat Arba. Kiryat means city or town. So the town of Arba, this was the ancient name of the modern city of Hebron, or sometimes people say Hebron, but it's Hebron, which is one of the cities on the middle spine of Israel. It's south of Jerusalem. Years later, David would rule from Hebron for the first few years of his ministry. And it's also, for that reason, called one of the cities of David. But look at here, verse number 2. So Sarah died in Kirjath Arba, the same as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. You can only imagine just the sorrow that Abraham had for his dear wife and all that they had experienced together. And we can look at episodes in Sarah's life, like her bitterness toward Hagar and her resentment of Hagar and Ishmael later on, and maybe even her lack of faith when she laughed at the promise of God. But when we look at her life as a whole, she was a woman of great faith as well. You think about the fact that she had to follow Abram from the Ur of the Chaldees and then to a place in the Promised Land where she lived in tents her whole life, a nomadic life. And for all of those years, it was just Sarah and Abram and no children, and just the pain of not being able to bear children. And then the episode in Egypt. And we could go on, but Sarah, no doubt, was a great woman of God. And now she has died, and this faithful life's companion of Abraham at this point, he just weeps and mourns, lamenting the loss of Sarah. And unusual, I think, for an elderly woman to precede her elderly husband in death, but that's the way it happened here. And Abraham certainly felt the magnitude, the weight of all of that. And it might be today that you have recently dealt with the death of a loved one. And maybe even you're an older person and you're listening to the podcast, and maybe just recently you've lost a husband or a wife like Abraham lost a spouse here. And it doesn't make a difference how many great years of joy you've celebrated together. There's a certain finality about death, even when it's somewhat expected in old age, that's just tough to bear. And that just brings weeping. And faith, because Abraham was a great man of faith, and weeping and grief, they can coexist. Just because one weeps and mourns the loss of a loved one doesn't mean that they lack faith. It just means that the relationship was real and the hurt is real. And Abraham feels that here. Look at verse number 3. And Abraham stood up from before his dead and spake unto the sons of Heth. So the sons of Heth would be the Hittites or the Hethites. So the Hittites are the sons of Heth, and they are the inhabitants of that area of Canaan, Hebron. And Abraham has been given that land by God. So by promise, this land belongs to Abraham, but it has not yet been occupied. Abraham is there as a sojourner, as a stranger, as a pilgrim. It's been given to him. It's potentially his, but he doesn't have it as a real estate possession yet. And I find it interesting that what Abraham says in verse number 4 is, I am a stranger and a sojourner with you. Give me a possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. So this is the first time in all of Abraham's time in the promised land, he's been there now for years, decades, that Abraham says, I want a physical stake in this land. I'm going to buy real estate. There will be a title deed that is associated with the land that I purchase. And I feel that even this stage in Abraham's life is a measure of faith. Now, Abraham could have just said, hey, God gave this to me and you owe this to me. But Abraham didn't do that. Abraham had a gentle, submissive spirit about him to say, I am willing to buy. Now, what I find very interesting, we're going to trace this transaction here in just a bit. What I find interesting is there are two significant purchases in the Bible that help establish that the land of Israel does indeed belong to the Jewish people, not just because God made a promise, because if you don't believe in the God of the Bible, you don't believe in the God of Abraham, then what does that have to do with anything? So the fact that there is money exchanged, a title deed that is distributed, tells me this is much more than just a theological promise, but this is actually a financial deal. So we see it with Abraham here when he buys Machpelah, or the cave, and Mamre, which was the area. But he also, later on, years later, like 800 years later, David. Remember, David takes over Jerusalem, but there's this threshing floor up on top of the hill, actually Mount Moriah, where Abraham just was with Isaac, that is owned by Araunah, or Ornan is pronounced in the other parallel passage. And remember, in both situations, the owner of the real estate, so here in Genesis 23, Ephron, who's the owner of that cave, and then in the case with David, Araunah, who's the owner of that threshing floor, in both cases, they offer the land as a gift. And yet in both cases, Abraham, the father of our faith, and David, to whom the great Davidic covenant was given, Messiah would come from the line of David, in both cases, they said, no, we will buy the land. And that's such an important point. Why? Because you cannot argue with ownership, because a title deed was involved. So very, very, very important. Look at verse, and I'll say this too, just to stay on the point for one more moment. That is, in Near Eastern custom, if you were to offer somebody land or possession as a gift, yes, they would own it, but you would always have an obligation to them. That it kind of was a strings attached gift. And what Abraham was saying is no. What David was saying is no. We will pay, and this will be free and clear ours. So look at verse 5. And the children of Heth answered Abraham, saying unto him, Hear us, my Lord. Thou art a mighty prince among us. Interesting how the inhabitants of the land now were viewing Abraham, his reputation. It says, in the choice of our sepulchres, bury thy dead. None of us shall withhold from thee his sepulchre, but that thou mayest bury thy dead. So the sons of Heth respect Abraham. You're a mighty prince. Hey, you take your pick. There are all kinds of hewn out sepulchres, and you just take the one you want. And whatever one you want is the one you'll have, and we're just going to give it to you. But remember what I said about the gift and how that would have strings attached and further obligations. And in essence, Abraham would be obligating even his children, grandchildren, and the nation that would come to the Hittites. So it says here in verse 7, and Abraham stood up and bowed himself to the people of the land, even to the children of Heth. So he's moved by this. He respects this magnanimity. But verse number 8, he communed with them, saying, If it be your mind that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat me to Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he said, which is in the end of his field. For as much money as it is worth, he shall give it me for a possession of a burying place among you. So what does Abraham do? He says, well, I appreciate that offer. I respect that offer. And I indeed know of a cave, of a burying place that I want. And it's owned by Ephron. So please get me in touch with him. But may it be clear, I am not going to take it. You've offered it, but I am going to settle for a price on that cave. Now, here's what's really cool. I was there in Israel. Now, Machpelah, the cave, it's still there. You can go visit. It's a site in Israel, in Hebron. Hebron is part of the Palestinian territory, so it's not always the safest place to go. I've been there, and it's, in calm days, it's very safe, but it's kind of out of the way. Most tour groups don't go there. Very, very, very few do. But I had the opportunity with the shoemakers from Pensacola and the Redlands from Campus Church in Pensacola, and my dear friend Carrie Schmidt. The six of us, we went down to Hebron, and we went to this cave, and we saw Mamre. And I would say this to you, listeners, get on YouTube and look up Bible Expedition or Expedition Bible, Joel Kramer, and look up the little video about Mamre and just the archaeological find there. It is fascinating. And so we had a chance to go see that, and it really, really was a fascinating thing. Hey, I just glanced at my watch and we're out of time. So we're going to stop there in verse number 9. We're going to pick it up with Abraham's conversation with Ephron next episode. Until then, I hope you have a great day in the Lord. God bless you, my friends.